Shalom Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh B'Shem Shai B'Shem Kadash. That belong to the apostles and our great millstone for teaching us his true peace and blessings. To the hopeful like real Shalom. Yahweh is the name of the honey fallen nature. B'Shem is the name, and Yahweh Shai is the name of the begotten Son. Back in our lesson, and as he entitled, we're going to be going to the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners. And as you know, we've been scattered and spread abroad across the four corners of the earth, which go into the diaspora, the dispersion, the scattering of our people, which again book is Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and we've gone down to the 64th verse. And that's why you have Jake all over there in the midst of these different lands, picking up and following after the way of the heathen, and even in the course of those years, looking like them. Because you would have Jake start to mingle with these heathen women, and over those years start to lose their features over time. So now you have Jake looking completely like heathens. But there's a way to distinguish whether they're of the Lord or not. Because once again, there's a certain spirit that resides in Jake that you can tell and pick out apart from the rest, that they are different, that there's something special about them. A good example is Bruce Lee. You can tell that he was different, that he was set apart. There's something special about him. And as you know, Jake is the salt of the earth. That flavor that Jake brings. Within dancing, sports, singing, and you'll see multiple videos come out where you have so-called Japanese or Chinese people singing, and you can just tell that they are different by the way they move, the way they are speaking and singing, and whatever the case may be. You can't mimic that, because once in Jake is special, man. That once in, they're the salt of the earth. That's why we're to try the spirit. We're not to judge purely based off of appearance. Because once again, we have, Jake all over the world, in the midst of these different lands, looking like heathens. You even have heathen nations looking like Jake. Another example where we're not to judge purely based off of appearance. And that's also a cut to these BOYs, men, these black-only Israelites that are pushing that the 12 tribes all need to be so-called black. But you can easily debunk that by the way of the scriptures. How Ephraim is an unturned cake, So just wanted to, get that point out the way. But I do want to do this video, just, play this real quick, and we'll go back to the points I was making. Just a quick little example. You have Jake over there, in these lands, and I'll continue on with after that.
すいません。ちょっと今お時間よろしいですか？僕SNS でストリートスナップ撮ってるんですけど、みんなかっこいいなと思ったので。
And I see a few of these Jakes have, slightly, Moab or Ammonite features in this case, which Ammonite going to, the Japanese.
撮影なんですよ。見る。何の集まり？
But as you're going to, you are what your father is. You're determined what you are by the way of your father, which you get Numbers 1 and 18. So though their mother may be a heathen woman, if their father is an Israelite, they would be an Israelite. Because once again, you have Jake that has been scattered amongst these heathen nations, had mingled, with these heathen women. And over those years, they would lose their features. Just like you can see right here, you have Jake slightly having, Ammonite or, Moabite features, whatever the case may be. But that's why I want them to judge by the way of the spirit, and not purely based on appearance, but especially by the way of the Father. But it's not something that you can just simply raise your hand and join and say that you want to be an Israelite,
ですかこれ MV シャツです。
これ何ですか？これ TikTok です。
アノニマスと遊びます。What's up？
リーダーは誰なんですか？
リーダーピーターです。LEMU でレムっていうんで、今から神風っていう新曲の MV 撮るんでみんなチェックしてください。
誰か代表でラップとかできます？
だから言ったじゃないですか。アノニマスで遊びます。What's up？ アノニマスを過去見ます。身長高っ。何センチですか身長
183です。
でも俺と大体一緒ぐらいですね。ちょっと高いんかな。
若干
182、12とかですもんね。
いやおいくつですか？
みんな22歳ですね。22の年で、今年23の年です。
一緒っすよ。2001年生まれです。
01はさ
じゃあ写真撮っていいですか？
撮りましょう。
はい、お願いします。バッチリです。バッチリです。ありがとうございます。
痛い。オッケー。 あ、飲みますやんこれ。あ
どこのハーブですか？
アメリカのハーブで
僕はコンゴ民主共和国ですね。
こっちの
あれ MV 撮影に協力してくれる仲間たちです。イケてるやつだけをかき集めてみたいな。まあイケてるやつの周りはいけてるっていう。
その目標とかあります今後の？
まあ目
でかい
標は
そうですねイベントに対してポップユーワーズとか今年そういうなんかヒップホップのでかいフェスとかあるんで、まあそれに今年出ようかなって感じですね。
全国区ですか？
そう全国ですね。
頑張ってください福岡から。
いやアジアにもライブしに行きたい。
But I want to say a quick little example, where you have Jake over there, in these lands. In this case, you can kind of clearly see that they are Jake, but you'll see in other cases where you see, they look completely like heathens. But once we're not to judge purely based on appearance, but by the way of the spirit, whether they're of the Lord or not. Whether they're, Israelites or heathen. And once you distinguish that by the way, of the spirit, whether they're of the Lord or not. Once again, like I mentioned earlier about that point, there's a certain spirit that resides in Jake that you can tell that they are different. There's something special about them. Especially if they're able to receive and understand this word. That's just a clear sign that you are Israel. You're of the Lord's people.
そうですね。アジア行きたいですね。
英語とかも喋れるんですか？
あ、日本語オンリーです。日本語しか喋りません。はい。
マジ福岡から頑張ってください。
頑張り
あ
ます。
りがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。頑張ります。頑張ります。
But like I said, I just wanted to get this video as a quick example because you have Jake over there in those lands, and you can kind of see how they have Ammonite features and all that. But like I mentioned, you'll see other videos where they are not easily as distinguished that they are Jake. But you can just tell by the way they sing, the way they move, the way they talk, that they're Jake. And like I mentioned earlier, especially if they're able to receive and understand this word. So that's pretty much on that. Let's get these scriptures I got right here, which I don't have in any particular order, which I got a few of them in order, but a lot of them I was just getting through the spirit, that were popping into mind. This book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 64. Now it says, "And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of earth, even unto the other." So this was our punishment, for our rebellion, going against Yahweh Shai. These are the curses. "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth, even unto the other, and there shalt thou serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers know, even wood and stones." Like I mentioned earlier, that's where you have Jake, picking up and following after the way of the heathen. You have Jake all over the world in the midst of these different lands. Like I mentioned earlier, dealing with Ammonites, Moabites, Chinese and Japanese. Because you've seen that video, they're fully speaking Japanese. That was the only language they spoke. So continue on. Jeremiah 16:13. "As therefore will I cast you out of this land into the land that ye know not. And I said, neither ye nor your fathers, and there shall ye serve other gods day and night, where I will not show you favor." There you go. But that's why you also get in the scriptures how in the land of our captivity, we shall remember ourselves. But this is Baruch 2:30. "For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves." So we're coming back to who we are. Because you have Jake in these other lands starting to come back and realize that they are Israelites. Come back to the names of Yahweh, by Shem, Yahweh Shai. Because you had I believe El Apostle Dahar posted a video a while back. We had brothers over there in the Philippines teaching the names of Yahweh, by Shem, Yahweh Shai. Showing you that they're Israelites. Obviously not every Filipino person is an Israelite, but you have Jakes over there in the midst of the land, looking like them, speaking like them. They are obviously different, by the way of the spirit, especially by the way of their father. And once if you're able to receive and understand this word, you are an Israelite. No matter how you may look, if you're able to receive this word and come to the true names of our power, Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, you're Israel. There's no doubts about that, But you will have these other people of this world try to misinterpret what we're saying, and that everyone can be saved and all that. No, that's not what we're speaking of. Because once again, you have Jake over there in these different lands, speaking and looking like these heathen nations, but are obviously set apart. They're obviously different. You know, like I mentioned earlier, there's a way to distinguish whether of the Lord or not. Because there's a certain spirit that resides in Jake that you can't mimic. You can't copy that. You know, Jake is a salt of the earth. Jake has that flavor. You can tell by the way they speak, the way they move, the way they dance. As you see within the sports, within movies, the way they act, whatever the case may be. You can't mimic that, you know? And what's in, like I keep mentioning, sloth for lack of a better word, especially if you're able to receive and understand this word. You know, that's a clear distinction that you're the Lord's people. But Baruch 2:30 one more time. For I knew that they would not hear me because they stiff-necked people, but in the land of the captivities they shall remember themselves. So we're coming back to who we are. Especially those brothers that are over there in these different lands. And also I got this picture right here. A good example is dealing with Drake's son, which I believe Drake is from the tribe of Judah, so he's obviously an Israelite. And as you know, you are what you, or sorry, you determine what you are by the way of your father, which is in Numbers 1:18. So his son, though he looks like an Edomite, would still be an Israelite. And once again, that's why we're not to judge purely based
And
off
once again,
of
especially by the way of the Father,
to judge
whether they're of the Lord or not.
and discern by the way of the Spirit. Now let's continue on. This is Matthew 24:30-31. Another example right here where we've been scattered. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man, which I probably should save for a little bit later, but still a good point either way. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man come in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Main point, verse 31. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the four corners of the earth, from one end of heaven to the other. And as we got in book of Deuteronomy 28 chapter, the 64th verse, how we have been scattered, we have been dispersed into these different lands. We see this way you have Jake over there in the land of China, Japan, you know, Russia, whatever the case may be. But as you see, now we're coming back to who we are. And you have Jake teaching in all these different lands. You know, like I mentioned earlier, we had El Paso Har. It's like El Paso Har posted that video a while back. And we had brothers over in the Philippines teaching the names of the Lord. Yahweh, Yahweh Shai. You know? So that's a clear distinction that they are the Lord's people. You know, that they're Israelites. You know, because they receive this word, they understand it. And you have heathen nations that look like Jake are not able to receive it, man, because they're not the Lord's people. You know? So this one's why we're to, you know, judge and try the spirit, man. Isaiah 11:11. Also another great point. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. Now I see right here when it says the second time, that means you would have to take part in the first time. Who took part in the first time? The Israelites, going back to ancient Egypt. So showing he's not just speaking of, you know, actual heathens. Because when you look all throughout the scriptures, Yahweh Bashim Shai is dealing with a specific people. And this is a cut to these people that want to try to misinterpret or twist the narrative of what we're saying, that everyone can be saved and all that jazz. And that's obviously not the case, because once again, the Lord is only dealing with Israelites. Going into the, you know, the Gentiles, the Israelite foreigners, where you have Jake over there in those other lands. Not speaking of the whole you know, heathen nations, because you have Jake over there in the midst of them. You know, it doesn't mean we're speaking of the heathen nations as a whole, because once you have Jake over there in the midst of those lands that have been following their ways, speaking and even looking like them, but they are Israelites. You know. Now one more time. Now it says the second time to recover the remnant. Read from top. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, if not Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the Swiss. So going to all these different lands that we have been scattered abroad. And it's not speaking of all these, you know, heathen nations, but the Israelites that are over there in the midst of them. Going into the Gentiles, the Israelite foreigners, the speckled bird. But here's the one thing, like I mentioned earlier, when you look all throughout the scriptures, Yahweh Hashem Shai has been dealing with a specific people and is dealing with a specific people, and that's Israel. So the Lord's not just going to, flip the script and, save the heathen nations, because he's dealing with only Israel. So going to show it's not just speaking of the heathen nations, but the Israelites that are over there in the midst of those lands. Just want to make that point clear, because you will have these different guys come out and try to twist what we're saying and saying that the heathen nations can be saved. And that's obviously not what we're speaking of. But the Israelites that are over there in the midst of the lands, that's what we're speaking of. That's what the Gentiles, those going to redeem. Now it says, and from Egypt, let's actually get the middle part one more time. Now it says, actually let's read on top. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time, so you would have to take part in the first time. Now who is that speaking of? Israel. Going back to ancient Egypt, when the Lord delivered us, out of ancient Egypt. So, where did you have these, so-called heathens right here? Take part in that. So it's showing it's not speaking of these heathen nations, but speaking of the Israelites that are over there in those lands, once again. Just want to, clear that point. Now, so the second time to recover the remnant people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. So there you go. Add on to that point where you've been scattered about across all these different lands. Now, it's Ezekiel 11:17. As says, therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will even gather you from the people and assemble you out of the countries where ye have been scattered. So going to show there's Israelites in the midst of these different lands that the Lord's going to gather them out of. So once again, going to show the Lord's dealing with a specific people. And he's not going to save these heathen nations. But the Israelites that are over there in the midst of those lands that look like them. But as you see, coming to the last days, you see a lot of our people are coming back to who we are. Going to the book of Ruth 2 and 30. Going to how in the land of captivities, we shall remember ourselves. So we're coming back. So once he's going to show, he's going to gather his people from all these different lands that, we have been scattered to. And specifically, the elect. The 1/3, that's who the Lord is specifically going to redeem, out of Israel. Because you're going to have, 2/3 of our people going to be destroyed on this side. But we're going to on top one more time just to bring that point home. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will even gather you from the people and assemble you out of the countries where you have been scattered. It can't get any clearer than that, man. And I will give you the the land of Israel. And who is that promised to? Israelites. Now, let's get a few more, and that's going to be, it on that. It's like if I, sound like a broken record, repeating certain things, but the Lord's one we left on a cross. Jeremiah 12:9. Now, it says, my inheritance is unto me, which is going to the title, as a speckled bird. One more time over on top. My inheritance is unto me as a speckled bird. The birds round about are against her. Come ye and assemble. All the beasts of the field come to devour. So you have Jake, once again, looking like heathens and, not looking the part. But obviously, they're Israel by the way of their spirit. And obviously by the way of their father. And once again, another example, one that's a judge purely based off of appearance. Because, as you see, we have been scattered in the midst of all these different lands. So just because they may not look the part, doesn't mean they're not Israel. It's why we're to try the spirit, whether they're of the Lord or not. So, 21. That's John 7, and 24th verse. Now it says, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. And we should judge by the way of the Spirit, which you'll, I believe, see. Where is it at? Which is Romans 8:16. To after that point, now it says, the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. Also, another example right here, 1 John 4:1. Now it says, beloved, believe not every spirit, because you have heathen nations, looking like Israelites, but are obviously not. By the way of their father, their spirit. They're obviously not the Lord's people. Now it says, 1 John 4:1, I say, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they're of the Most High, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Now let's jump back up here. Numbers 1:18. Another great point. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers. So you're determined what you are by the way of your father. So if your father is an Israelite, you are an Israelite. Because you have these other Israelite camps that are pushing that both your parents need to be Israelites in order for you to be an Israelite, when that's not the case, because the father is the one that carries the seed. Which then you are what your father is. So let's see. By the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upward by their polls. And we're going to shut this down with book of Ezekiel 37:21. And like I said earlier, the Lord's lesson is edifying to the point. And it says, and say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone. Come on. And say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, as we got in Isaiah 11:11, as well as many other scriptures where you have Jake in the midst of these different lands. And the Lord's going to gather us from that. And specifically, his elect. And I'll take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and I'll gather them on every side and bring them to their own land. As we also got in Matthew 24, 34th verse, how the angels of the Lord shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the four corners of the earth. So once again, going to show the Lord's all these specific people. And when it says all these different names and lands right here, it's not speaking of the actual heathens, but speaking of the Gentiles, the Israelite foreigners that are over there in the midst of those lands, where we have been scattered. So that's ultimately the point right there. I saw that video, so I'm making a quick lesson through the Spirit. It may be a little bit longer lesson than intended, but Lord's lesson edifying to the point either way. I do want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh Hashem Yahshua, Hashem Kadash, step onto the apostles, and also great millstone for teaching us this true peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of Israel. Shalom. See you next one.